In a recent study conducted of 20,000 Americans, over 47% of them reported feeling alone. That's a staggering percentage. How many of you watching this right now would say, yeah, you feel alone too? For many of you, you would say, yes, I feel so isolated in my life right now. And that makes a lot of sense. Others of you would say yes, but even if the pandemic wasn't going on, in your everyday life, when everything is normal, you still feel alone. If that's you, then you would be encouraged by what Psalm 25 says. David, who's writing this, is so vulnerable, and he tells us in verse 16, "Turn to me and have mercy, for I am alone and in deep distress." Thankfully, when David writes this, he explains why he feels that way. One of the reasons he feels alone is because of some outward circumstances in his life that he can't control. He tells us in verse 19, "See how many enemies I have and how viciously they hate me." These are people that are against him, and though he wishes they would go away, he can't control them. Many of us, we feel alone because of circumstances that have happened to us that we wish they would stop or go away, but we can't control it, and therefore we feel alone or isolated. Another reason why David feels alone is because of some of the inward struggles he has. We see this in verse 18 where he says, "Feel my pain and see my trouble. Forgive all my sins." One of the reasons David feels alone is because of his sin. He's chosen some things in his life, and as a result, he's turned his back on God, and that's left him feeling isolated from God. Of course, he would feel alone because of that. But I appreciate the first part of verse 18 where it says, "Feel my pain and see my trouble." We don't know exactly the pain and the trouble he's talking about here, but they seem to be categories that are happening within his heart that he says, listen, I don't know exactly why I feel this way, but I do, and it hurts a lot. Now, David, in the end, even though his loneliness problem wasn't fixed, he still fixed his eyes on God. I love what he says at the end in verse 21, "May integrity and honesty protect me, for I put my hope in you." He's saying, look, even if I still continue to feel alone for whatever reason, God, my eyes are on you. I want to put my hope in you. I'm grateful for both the vulnerability of David and, of course, in the end, when he affirms his trust in him, because I feel a lot like David. About a year and a half ago, I went through a really hard time in my life, and in the end, I discovered that I was dealing with depression, and I would also include the word loneliness. Especially for me as an extrovert, I have great family, great friends, great church family. I love being around people, but during that time, I just felt so alone, even though I was surrounded by a lot of people. And it led to some really dark places in my life. And like David, I don't get over that. I just manage that every single day, but I do look to God whenever I can, when I feel like that's the right thing to do. It should be every day, right? When I do that, oh man, a lot of my darkness will dim significantly. But I'll admit to you that when I do look to God, sometimes the darkness doesn't dim. It's still there. For me, I had to seek help outside of myself, and I went and saw a counselor, and that has helped me tremendously in my life. So for you who would consider yourself the 47%, let me tell you that you are not alone. As cliche as it sounds, God is there with you. You can put your hope in him. But people like me, we're going through the same thing. I encourage you to reach out to someone, whether it's a counselor or a trusted friend, and allow that person to encourage you along the way. Until next time, love you guys.